Humans have become remarkably skilled at getting milk from animals. We drink cow milk, goat milk, sheep milk. In different regions, people also milk buffalo, camels, yaks, reindeer, and even donkeys. So a strange question naturally appears. Why don't we milk pigs? Pigs are mammals. They produce milk. And like other mammalian milk, it contains fats, proteins, sugars, and nutrients designed to support newborn growth. So the problem isn't that pig milk is biologically impossible for humans to consume. The real challenge begins when you try to collect it. A dairy cow has an udder structure that makes human milking relatively efficient. A sow is built very differently. Instead of one large udder, she has multiple smaller mammary glands distributed along her underside. And she doesn't have a large udder designed to store and release milk conveniently for human collection. Milk release in pigs is triggered by nursing. Piglets stimulate the letdown reflex by feeding, and the sow responds with short, timed bursts of milk. Her entire biology is organized around a litter feeding together. One piglet takes one teat. Another occupies the next, and the mother releases milk in rapid cycles so the entire group can feed. For a human standing beside her with a bucket, that's a remarkably inconvenient arrangement. But anatomy is only part of the story. Even if the milk could be collected more easily, a deeper question remains, is it actually worth the effort? Because domestication is never just about possibility. It is about efficiency, consistency, and long-term usefulness. And once you compare a cow with a sow, the answer becomes surprisingly clear, and it has almost nothing to do with whether pig milk is edible. The biggest difference between a sow and a dairy cow is not simply how much milk they produce. It is how that milk is delivered. A cow can stand beside a farmer while milk is collected from her udder. A sow is built for a completely different biological rhythm. Her piglets need to feed quickly, competing for access to multiple teats. The sow's milk is released in short, triggered bursts rather than remaining continuously available for easy human collection. Nursing itself stimulates milk letdown, tightly synchronizing mother and offspring. This works perfectly for piglets. It is extremely inefficient for human collection. The piglets are faster. They are better adapted to the timing of milk release. And the sow's milk production is primarily organized around sustaining the litter, not supplying a separate human harvest. There isn't a large, easily accessible supply sitting there for humans to collect between nursing episodes. This is very different from modern dairy cattle. Humans spent generations selecting cattle for high milk production. A modern dairy cow can produce far more milk than her calf would naturally consume. That surplus allows humans to take a portion while the animal continues producing. The cow became valuable because her biology and human selection worked together. The sow never offered the same advantage. Even if a machine could extract sow's milk, another problem would remain. How much could you actually collect? Agriculture has always been brutally practical. Farmers consider feed, labor, housing, equipment, time, transport, and the value of the final product. If collecting milk from a sow requires far more effort for much less practical value, the economics become difficult to justify. The pig may be an excellent meat animal, but that doesn't make it an excellent dairy animal. And this is where the story gets even more interesting. Because the cow's advantage isn't just that she produces milk, it is that humans learned to reshape her biology to produce far more milk than her wild ancestors ever did. A cow's real advantage was never just that she produces milk. It was that humans learned how to collect it repeatedly over time. That single shift changed everything. As cattle domestication developed, people gradually learned to manage female cows through multiple reproductive cycles, while harvesting milk from the same animals again and again. The milk became a renewable source of food. Over thousands of years, selective breeding made the system even more efficient. Cows that produced more milk were favored. Those traits were passed on. Generation after generation, milk production increased far beyond what a single calf would normally consume. That surplus helped make dairy farming practical on a large scale. A farmer could feed the cow, protect her, allow her to reproduce, and still collect milk while she continued producing. The animal became a long-term food system rather than a one-time resource. Pigs never fit into that model. A sow's milk production is tightly linked to the needs of her litter. Piglets are often numerous, and they efficiently consume milk as soon as it is released. The system works perfectly for raising young pigs, but it is not designed for human harvesting. It is efficient for piglets. It is inefficient for people. There is another important factor. Pigs were already extremely valuable for a different reason: meat. They grow quickly, they can eat a wide variety of foods, they can produce large litters, and they provide substantial amounts of meat. So even if early farmers noticed that pigs produced milk, there was little incentive to reshape them into dairy animals. Domestication is not about maximizing every possible use of an animal. It is about identifying the uses that make the most practical sense. Cattle combine several advantages. They could provide milk, meat, hides, manure, and labor. Pigs had different strengths. They were excellent food animals. They simply were not practical milk producers. But even when biology and practicality pointed in one direction, there was still one final force that made the decision permanent. Culture itself turned dairy into something far harder to replace than any animal ever could be. Once humans discovered animals that could be milked efficiently, something far larger than simple farming began to take shape. A culture of dairy. Milk stopped being just a resource taken from an animal. It became something humans learned to transform. They made butter, cheese, yogurt, cream, fermented products, and eventually an entire world of foods built around milk. Different societies developed dairy traditions around the animals available to them. Cattle became especially important in many regions. Goats and sheep became major sources of dairy elsewhere. Other cultures built traditions around buffalo, camels, yaks, and reindeer. The key idea is simple. Humans didn't need every mammal to become a dairy animal. They needed a few animals that worked well. Once those systems were established, communities built knowledge around them. Farmers refined breeding practices. People developed ways to preserve milk. Recipes passed through generations. Markets formed around dairy products. And eventually, entire economies depended on the animals that produced them. This created a powerful feedback loop. The more useful dairy became, the more humans invested in improving dairy animals. The better those animals became, the more milk was available. And the more familiar milk became, the less reason there was to experiment with difficult alternatives. A pig faced a major disadvantage. Even with a workable method for collecting sow's milk, humans would need an entirely new production system, new equipment, new breeding strategies, new processing methods, new consumer habits, and all of it would compete with cattle, goats, and sheep that already carried generations of accumulated knowledge. So the question was never simply, can pigs produce milk? They can. The real question is, why build an entire dairy system around pigs when other animals already do the job better? Humans choose what offers the strongest combination of biology, behavior, economics, and tradition. Pigs simply never offered enough advantages to replace established dairy animals. But even that leaves one final question unanswered. If pig milk is real, natural, and technically edible, what would actually happen if humans tried turning it into a familiar dairy product? So, after everything we've explored, we can finally return to the original question. Could humans drink pig milk? In principle, yes. Pig milk is real mammalian milk. A sow produces it naturally for her piglets, and its biological purpose is the same broad one found across mammals, delivering dense nutrition to rapidly growing young. The issue was never that pig milk was forbidden or fundamentally unusable. The real challenge lies in everything around it. Collecting it is difficult. The sow's anatomy is not designed for human milking. Her milk is released in short nursing episodes. Her piglets are already competing for the milk as it is released, and even if humans solve those challenges with specialized equipment and carefully managed breeding, another question would remain. Why build an entirely new pig dairy industry when cows, goats, sheep, buffalo, and other established dairy animals already provide milk efficiently? That's the key distinction. Humans don't domesticate animals simply because they can provide something. We choose animals when the entire system makes sense. The animal must be manageable, its resources must be accessible, production must be reliable, and the final output must justify the effort required to obtain it. Pigs simply fail that particular dairy test, but that doesn't make them useless. Quite the opposite. Humans found other valuable roles for pigs. They became important sources of meat. They can produce large litters, they adapt well to many environments, and their biology makes them highly effective for purposes that have nothing to do with milk. So the mystery of pig milk isn't really about some forgotten taboo. It's a story about domestication and efficiency. Some animals became dairy animals. Some became meat animals. Some became sources of wool, and some became useful in several ways at once. The pigs simply landed in a different category. Humans didn't ignore pigs because their milk was impossible. We simply found better animals for the job. And perhaps that's the strangest lesson of all mammals evolved milk to nourish their young, but humans decided which species were worth building dairy systems around.